these two proposals that came in your email today at about 4, and they're there. And there's a supporting document for action items, which is item 4.1. And that is Mark's update on Rainfall product.
Okay. And Denise, did you have something you wanted to?
Just a little comment, yes.
So where should we put that?
So maybe new business, do 7.1.
Sure.
And can we give a hint?
It's regarding earth stewardship.
Earth
Stewardship.
stewardship. Okay.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for the approving the agenda? In favor? Opposed? Carried. Minutes. Any a motion for the approving the minutes?
I'd be happy to approve them, but I wasn't here, so it would be inappropriate. Then I can approve the minutes or move to.
Okay, seconder? Any discussion? In favor? Carried. Public comments, nothing there. Action items. Review action items from the previous meeting.
Do you want me to do them?
Okay.
Okay. Carla, follow up with the CFO regarding participating in a phone meeting with the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative.
Yes, that is done. We are going to meet next week. Or maybe the week after next, I can't remember. I think next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll send a document to Carla. We'll share it with Glenn for his information.
Yes, that happened. I'm hoping to, this is the water conservation one that Alan was lead on. I've asked Jeff to be part of the committee, and we haven't met yet, but I think the way Alan was looking at this is we've put together an outline that I think is pretty comprehensive, and we both were feeling that this is something that has to be fleshed out by a water professional. That the outline is a guide that, and so what I'd like to do is before it's finally Carlaized, I'd like to just go over it with Jeff and make sure that there's nothing to add or change.
So I'll say ongoing, and I'll change Alan to Jeff. Okay. Mark, find out what the composter, digester, and rain barrels are made of, and what the recycling process entails. So we received an email from him regarding that. Does anyone want to recap that for?
I have it right here. The tanks from Pure Tanks are made of polyethylene. They're recyclable, but owners have to take them to town themselves as they are not accepted on in the island's recycling program. And the tanks would need to be cut down into manageable pieces. He's done some looking into metal rain barrels, but hasn't found much, and he'll keep looking.
So I have a thought that came from that after reading that. Is it okay I comment?
Sure.
Two things. One is that I had a discussion with his last name. I'm not sure his last name, but his role in water conservation is quite extensive. His name is Dominic. He's an engineer, and he's got a lot of experience in those areas. I had a long discussion with him about this kind of thing, and I had a thought the other day after I read this, was that the polyethylene tanks have their purpose. I mean, everything has a place. I was wondering about, because we were looking alternative composite, like whether it be metal or something that was more maybe recyclable or actually more conducive to some people's lifestyle. And I had this idea because in talking with Dominic, he said to me very clearly that the catchment has to be of a certain diameter to fulfill the obligations of a house. But for the purpose of rain, for use for fire prevention, it could be a much smaller unit. And that these units could be made of concrete. And that they could be made as a model, or we could create a model and perhaps use that for a much cheaper price, and therefore they don't have the same issue with water. So I want to just bring that up as one more thing to throw out, but just because we're looking at rain barrels and rain catchments and
Anybody got any input on this yet, Carly?
I think that's a really good idea.
thank you.
Yeah.
Noted.
Well, because
Carla
I
agrees.
can picture it being something that you bury in the ground too, right? That has a top, something like what we use for our,
It can be
pit
buried, it can be
toilets,
above,
right?
it can be, embellished, it can be doing.
but it maybe can open up like water storage for a lot of people. And it would be probably more durable when you bury it. Some of these barrels don't allow for burying. I think maybe they can't take the pressure of the earth around them. Some of the comments that Mark had made me think a little bit about, I worked in the same office with Jen McGowan, who's the emergency programmer, so I asked her about cisterns and whether or not there was a discount on insurance if you have a cistern, and there isn't right now, but there will be one probably soon. Industry experts are saying that within the next 10 years or so there will be one. But if you can add gutter mounted sprinklers to your house for around $200 just for one, like just a straight up sprinkler, and that's a really good fire protection measure. I know my friend Andy was in the interior fighting fires this summer, and it's really crazy. They had a 98% success rate saving homes from forest fires, where they went in and all they did was plug up the gutter and set up a sprinkler on top of the house right before the fire came in, and they're completely saved, right? So it's a really proven technology, and that's something that people can do themselves if they have like a pump and a cistern on site. So it's just another way to sell it. But I was thinking, if that's kind of an innovative thing, the concrete thing, so maybe that funding, it's a really good idea for applying for that funding, right?
Yeah.
Because we're getting creative.
Well, exactly, right?
Yeah, I can see somebody who has the knowledge of working with on-site concrete, because I've had a little bit of experience with that too. And I can see these like a little bit of a model or type, a prototype, and playing with that and giving us a year of playing with that and then perfecting that model, and then you can see them with much less cost, and yeah, it's just an idea.
David?
So why concrete? My concern about concrete right off the top is it's one of the highest GHG. You make natural emissions in two ways. First of all, because you have to have a whole lot of energy, because you're basically taking limestone, and then you're basically driving the CO2 out of the limestone to make oxidized, whatever, calcium, and that's what cement is. And so you're creating CO2 in both situations. So right now I've been in a lot of conversations with the head of the Concrete Association locally about green concrete. There are some better ways, but it's chemical processes as well as energy processes, so it's really tricky. There's a lot of work going on globally about that, but
So
right now it's not a nice substance, and so it's, like making apartment buildings, 6-story apartment buildings out of wood is considered way better than the concrete.
So in the long term, and in terms of the breakdown and the effects in the environment, it's really just that bad? Is that what you're saying?
It's not that it breaks down, it's that you make concrete out of limestone,
Yes.
and to do that,
Yeah.
it gives off a huge amount of carbon dioxide.
Yeah. And if if we looked at that in terms of the effects of that, and we looked at how the effects of, for instance, the emissions or the issue of using polyethylene and the environment, is there anything that we can compare that to? That would
Probably,
help
you'd have
us?
to, all these things turn out to be incredibly complicated, unfortunately. You'd have to do a life cycle analysis.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's hard to do, you need an engineer, it's something
Yeah.
to do it. I simply can't answer the question, so I
I
don't.
think we're looking
Do
also
you-
at the concern for the recycling and the graveyard effect that it can create, that if you have to take these out, you have to cut them down, you have to transport them, the likelihood of getting that done efficiently or having people involved in that, it creates just another level of concern.
With concrete, it's never leaving, it's staying there forever.
Exactly, exactly.
But plastic stays there forever too.
Yeah,
And plastic, one of the problems with plastics, it stays forever.
exactly. So would, yeah, any thoughts on that?
But anyway, I'm not an expert, but I'm
Yeah.
just raising that concern.
Yeah,
that's all.
that was the first thing that came to my mind was the CO2 emissions
Yeah.
from concrete. I think we'd have to find someone with the expertise
Yeah.
to
That I don't have.
a life cycle analysis
Yeah.
would have to be
Yeah.
done.
I mean, a great way to do it is when you're doing a foundation in a new house,
That's what
it's part of the foundation for the house. You know, you got the hole under the house, you got rock, concrete around it, it's there anyway,
Yeah.
filled with water.
Yeah.
But to refit, like my house or somebody else's, it's,
Or
Or
just
this
the last
wasn't
piece.
necessarily refit, it was also just that if we're looking at a rain barrel that's a, let's say, even a four by four, it's something that you can actually have beside your house or up, you know, in the hill beside your house. And it was just an idea about what kind of lifespan it would have. According to some people, it can go 20, 30 years. It would have a lining, you need a lining in it in order to make sure that the water becomes or maintains its you can also make it potable water that way.
yeah.
So it wouldn't just be a rain barrel. It's just thoughts.
Yeah,
What about, does anybody know anything about hempcrete?
But what's our?
Hempcrete?
That's a good idea.
There's a
Yeah, good question,
company on
Donna.
island.
Yep.
yeah. Jason
Jason Henderson.
Henderson
That's a
would be
really good
someone
idea.
that might have some information about that. Does anybody know Jason?
I know Jason.
Could you talk to
I
him?
can talk to Jason. Yeah, and I've got a contact for him, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Um,
great idea.
So I expect that it would, when it gets to any size, it would have, the concrete would have to be reinforced. It would have to have something in it, and maybe hemp might be the, you know, you need some fiber or metal or something like that in there to strengthen it. So, did I see another hand up?
No, it was me, your thoughts were very strong, and I had this, something occurred a week ago where somebody came to me and said, I want to make a proposal for a prototype for hemp on the island. So we grow hemp over the next year and in a certain way, just as a small catchment and for use on the island. And if we wanted, we could actually do something very creative with that too, so.
Okay.
So I've got Denise as an action item to reach out to Jason Henderson. Are there any other actions associated with this discussion?
There wasn't anything in there about the composting though, which was on the action item. Yeah, find out what the composter digester are made of. There's something still to carry forward there.
So we'll say Mark Evans, do your homework properly next time? Yeah.
More like Mark,
Just
soldier
thinking.
on, Mark.
Keep on
There
going.
was,
Yeah.
he
Keep it
did
up.
say something about the composter in terms of, when he talked to BBC, that, they said they don't carry them in, because there's so many different styles and sizes, that, people tend to just, they wait for someone to choose their own and then order it. I think, I don't know if we're gonna, don't know if the composters are as worth doing as maybe the water storage. Like, I feel like the water storage is something we can focus on and encourage, but I feel like people who are gonna compost are kind of already doing
Composting
it.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually find that the food sovereignty group you were saying, that there's
Yeah.
some really keen groups, one of the groups on the island that are, that's sort of their mandate, they can do a lot of help, we can work with them for education, to promote home composting. Because we definitely, when we do the composting, we want to have, in tandem, we want to make sure that that's going on as well. But I think food sovereignty is all of that.
Yeah.
So it's just encouraging it. We could disseminate information as well as a municipality better than we have been from composting, I think.
On
So-
compost, you can build yourself too,
Yeah.
depending on
Yeah.
what the model is.
Yeah.
There's plastic kind of.
Like, maybe it should
Not
be
out of wood.
two different,
Yeah, build out of wood, so less
Ah.
demand maybe for a product sort of thing. but,
Yeah.
Mark had a link in his, and it was just, I loved it because it was that basic, just with planks, with wood, something that you could build yourself, remove the bottom slats, and just simple,
Yeah.
simple. Yeah, simple, streamlined. Right there, I don't know if I found this.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a really good one, I think that style.
There it is.
And it's a picture down lower stuff.
can you just switch one this time?
This one here.
Sure.
Just the basics,
That's
basic
simple.
one, but this is the best.
Yeah.
It's amazing how simplicity works.
Like
Okay,
it's modular too, you can put several.
so I'll call that done, and
Yep.
it'll reappear next meeting from Hempcrete. Crete, okay. Contact Carla with ideas to be included in water grant funding opportunity proposal. That can be on.
You probably were inundated by that.
Every month.
Yes.
Yeah, leave it on.
Yeah,
Keep
Yeah, we
sending
can
your
do
staff, she can get us money.
I think it's a good thing to keep reminding us
yeah, yeah. Because
that money's
I
available.
expect some of us will stumble across something that will
Right,
tweak and
yeah.
yeah.
Bonnie, meet offline with Bowen in transition to discuss process and expectations and report back to the committee. Done. That'll come up the next item.
Okay. Okay.
Bowen in transition. So I just wanted to set out some clear guidelines or a clear process for the upcoming videos. The first video that we received, we had before the last meeting. And I mean, they were pretty well down the road. As Maribeth said, the first copy of, it was an edit, but she felt, I asked her, because Maureen said what she always asks people, how close are you to being finished, this project? And so Maribeth did say that she was pretty close to being finished. So I did provide some feedback. I want to preface this by saying this is an organization, it's a volunteer group. They have $2,000 for 7 or 8 videos.
Yeah.
It's not the highest quality. And there's, I think, a certain level of finishedness that's going to happen with the videos. I think moving forward, we're going to have more input. Now that the process is in place, we get to review the content, and then they're going to show us the first edit of the video moving forward. But with this video, it had kind of, for whatever reason, kind of moved along without us really having a lot of input. And I know that we would all like to see maybe we would have different ideas of what we'd like to see, but maybe a little bit more refined. And I just, again, they were given $2,000 to complete all these videos. I think it's a tricky one. I wasn't around when the carrot money went towards the project. I mean, I think the idea is wonderful. So, I mean, our logo, municipality's logo is on the video, but as a financial supporter. And I did come up with a few, I think, realistic, constructive pieces of feedback for Mary Beth. However, as I say, it was kind of confined to what they could do with what they already had. So, and trying to be respectful moving forward to just really always realizing this is we did give them the money, this is a volunteer group, and they're doing the best they can. So I think moving forward, we're going to have some more input. So this is, I don't need to go through every piece of feedback, but she did do what I say, she did cut the length, what I said, she did cut the length back about 5 minutes. It's still pretty long. But she did do what I'd asked. Again, it's still pretty rough if you have seen this last copy. It's grassroots, I guess that's what they call it. It's a good effort.
Are we gonna watch it?
Does everybody want to watch it?
I think we've all seen it probably. No? Was
Oh,
that
okay.
right?
Yeah.
I didn't see the second version, but
Yeah, it's pretty much,
offline,
yeah,
I'll have to read
yeah,
it,
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess I just want the committee's feedback. This is the process we set out, that she will supply us with the proposals for each video moving forward. She will supply the first edit to staff, and staff will disseminate it to all the committee members. And that's about it. It just was trying to, get a little bit more feedback from the group. It's a tough one, whenever you're dealing with video, art, any arts. I just know, like, even with the lock block wall or something, whenever you're dealing in the realm of arts or visual arts, it's a tough one.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. I think that my thought is that if the first draft can be delivered in a really simple and succinct way, blocked out nicely, and we can approve that, then usually the content built on that will usually be fairly clear. But if we don't feel like we can see what we want out of that basic template, then usually we'll go astray. That's really a basic way to look at it.
So Denise, we've been supplied with 2 proposals for the next 2 videos, so the heat pump and the conservation development video, which just came as late items. So they're here on the table. So we have those 2 proposals, but they're what we want to talk about. So are you saying the other way around, that this is good, this process, you
Well,
will work
there
on?
are different ways to approach a video, the making of a video, but if you want to do something that, it's like writing a letter, you have your introduction, you have your meeting, then you have your conclusion. And it's basically the same way. If the proposal is really that clear, and this is what we're going to do in the first half, second half, and the third half, then usually the outcome is going to be fairly clear.
So I've
Got
got
the
the
heat
heaters
pump
down
down
there.
I've got some comments before we get to looking at the 2 ideas. First of all, I thought your comments are thoughtful and nicely done. I don't know who the target audience is, because at 11 minutes, well, it used to be 15, now 11 minutes, there are not many people, I don't think, who'd watch something that's 11 minutes long. But people who are already interested, who know the people involved, they might watch 11 minutes, but most people won't. And so I want to understand who the target audience is. Are we, like, there are a lot of kids who are excited about this, they went, to various things, we've got their parents who are, I need a sense of who the target audience is, that then you can figure out what kind of what sort of video you need to produce. How much does it move and so on. Then I'd like, in terms of going forward, I'd like to see actually a storyboard, because it's a visual thing, so we should have a storyboard. Here's what we're going to work our way through, rather than sort of a logical list of questions. It's like, what are we going to try to do here? Who's the audience and how are we going to engage them? There are also some sort of simple editing production techniques that could help edit a whole lot, like doing re-asks. Like a re-ask is, so I used to work in television. So it's when so I'm the interviewer and I ask all the questions, and later on, we've only got one camera, I pretend to ask the questions again. Then you can edit it. Because the edits in what we have in here are like jump cuts where you just suddenly the person does this because you've had to cut a bunch of it out. Or you slap up a visual, a picture of something or other. So you need something different to edit from it, and a re-ask is the simplest way. So I'd like to have a lot more of a discussion about who we're trying to appeal to, and then I don't see producing any video longer than 5 minutes, because I personally will never watch anything longer than 5 minutes, 2 minutes. I don't do videos, so I'm a bad person. I got to read stuff. But I just don't see something longer than 5 minutes, but it's my opinion, but maybe some other people have some ideas about that. So my feeling, just watching the last one, I could still cut a whole lot out of that. There's some nice pieces in there. I think Jackie's 3 different, the different ways of getting at your own consumption are really good. My other concern about what we have with the original one, the one we've just seen, is it doesn't align very well with the climate change strategy that we've just got going around the whole community, which is all about transportation. And now Jay, who knows way more about this than I do, is saying your biggest thing is flying. And I'm sorry, Jay, I just don't think that could be true for most Bowen Islanders. It's a ferry and it's driving. And so, if we're talking about what your biggest impacts are, I would think it would be driving. That's what our plan says.
I think what we're seeing is the real value of having a treatment beforehand, the proposal, and I think we might suggest identify the target audience as the top item.
Yeah.
Bonnie, yep.
Would you be willing to meet with, just say what you said here?
Sure,
so
sure.
They may not
Yeah.
watch this.
Yeah.
They may
Yeah.
not, because what you just said here,
Yeah.
I think is very valuable. If you could sit down with
I'd be happy to
and,
do
and
that.
because I think one thing I think that we all agree on, we want people to watch it.
Yes,
And they
exactly.
want people to watch it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think what you said is very helpful.
Sure, I'd be very happy to do that, and I certainly appreciate the group doing all the work that they're doing, and they got hardly any
Yeah.
money to do it.
And I just wanted to be respectful in their
Exactly.
efforts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be
And
very happy.
so back to process. I think this is great that we can have the proposal with the target audience as being part of it, and the discussion can be some of the things like what David was just saying, and we've got some expertise people that do communication in this group that we can in each one of these make some valuable suggestions on technique, not just content.
Yeah.
And so, Bonnie?
Yeah, I really like the idea of the storyboard.
Yeah.
So, because we have this, but as you say, in the new proposals here,
Yeah.
and with the conservation development, it's just a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
It really isn't very engaging
Yeah.
or exciting.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of it is, and I think David was alluding to this too, is instead of questions, what are the outcomes we'd like
Exactly.
to see?
What do you want to have
Target
happen on the
audience
screen?
and outcomes, what we'd like them to walk away with in their
Exactly.
pockets.
That's right.
And so, that might end up that, a series of questions might be an ideal one for
Yeah.
topic X, but a different treatment would be
Exactly.
Yeah.
very useful. Yes, Bonnie?
So just going back then to the video that we have at hand, because I think Mary Beth feels that that's maybe the final edit. So maybe I could set up meeting, I don't know, David, maybe with you and me, with Mary Beth. And I mean, it's a good first attempt, but I wouldn't like to see it maybe as the first video that's released of the series.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think there's some valuable input to.
Sure, I've got one more question. Since if the municipal brand is going on it, does it have to go through council to say, are you okay putting the brand on this, or what? I don't know what the process. Council, I don't want councillors to find out about this later and say, hey, I didn't know.
Well, I mean, council, did they vote? I was away, so did
Council
they
voted
voted on
on-
how to spend the
Yes.
money?
Yeah, you voted on the money going to this organization.
That's yeah.
The beginning of the video says, thank you for sponsorship from Bowen Municipality.
Okay.
Not that we are a producer of it.
And
And
response.
I think it was even mentioned within the council discussion when we voted on it, that our communications coordinator would have to review it, which she has.
Okay.
Yeah, she's reviewed the use of the logo, that's all
Okay.
she's reviewed. No, Sophie.
Oh, no?
No, Sophie is not reviewing the videos.
Okay,
She's
sorry,
reviewing
I
all of
misunderstood
the
then.
use of the logo. And they've used the logo properly, and it says supported by, that's all, she's not
Okay.
involved in that, in all.
And my suggestion would be perhaps a rewording instead of supported by funding partially from
Something like that, sure.
Bowen.
I'm not sure what it says, it might be that.
Because it makes it less that they're speaking for us, it's that they're a community group that's being supported by the movement.
That's how it should be presented.
So, getting back to Rebecca, because I said we would discuss the videos here at the meeting and sort of set up that process of us seeing the contact sheets and then going and making a video, us doing the first edit of the video, that was sort of the process set out. So I could get back to her tomorrow, check your availability and just say that we have some concerns we'd love to meet with her. And I would think Dave as well, because he's going to be producing some of the videos as well. Dave Pollard.
Just want to make one little, thank you, I agree, I think it's pretty lovely what you've outlined. I'd also like to add as a possibility, I know that this is important for them, and the idea of videos that are targeted towards teenagers and kids inclusively. So that would be a very different kind of video, but very doable if it's done in a very simple way.
You need some expertise. Like I'm way too old. I haven't a clue what kids look at.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
17 seconds.
that's
I
about
was
it.
thinking-
Yeah, your 5 minutes is way too long.
Yeah.
17
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it disappears.
Never seen it.
There is lots of expertise on Bowen Island.
Yeah. I'm uncomfortable with well, I guess we have to talk to the Bowen and Transition folks about who their target audiences Yeah.
are. And if they say school kids, well, that's one option. But I don't want to foist that on them if they're not prepared for that. This is something that I think can grow each year, and so let's not try and tell them what their audiences should be. But I think what we really need to know is, and it can't be general audience. You know, that's something in my profession. People are expenetrated if they say general public as the target for an interpretive program, because it doesn't mean anything. So anyway, I think your model is great. The two of you, I think this will work.
So next week, actually not on tomorrow,
Sure.
but next week.
Okay.
So I've got two actions. One is Councillor Hawking and Bonnie Brokenshire meet with Bowen and Transition to discuss points made, including target audience, length of video, production techniques, for example, re-asks, and providing a storyboard in advance.
Perfect.
Main points.
Yeah.
And then possibly you will also then give us a revised process. Is that okay? Is that appropriate?
It'll
I
come
think
out
the
of that
process is
discussion.
about
Process will be the same.
I
Okay.
think the process is the same.
Okay.
But it will just be the story. It'll be the proposal, but it'll be in a different format.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the one on conservation development, and so this is already moving along. It's gone through the APC, it went to council the other day. So is this going to be, are they going to be doing the interviews right away, or I'd rather talk to them first?
I think we better talk to
Yeah.
Dave and Mary Beth.
Before.
First. Yeah, and also with the conservation development it's going out for review to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's in the process of review.
Exactly.
So I don't, yeah, but they can still talk about it.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, there's a concept, like John Reed, it's great to interview John, because they've been thinking about this and working on this for quite a few years. But the other problem is, the APC has sort of approved it somewhat, and council has asked for some other people to look at it. So it will actually become a real thing, not just a concept in someone's mind. So we have to know, well, which are we talking about? Probably we're going to be talking about the thing that council actually approves.
Right.
So we should probably wait a
I
bit.
think that was my take there too,
Yeah.
David, with that one, just
Yeah.
because we need to,
Yeah,
it might shake out a little bit, it might expand a little
Exactly.
bit, it might
Exactly.
shrink, we don't know.
Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing about that one that makes me uncomfortable is, I like John and John. I've worked with John
Yeah.
Dowler.
Yeah.
I've talked to John Reed about many things and participated in community stuff with him. But I'm uncomfortable that it's just coming from them. This is a bigger concept than two guys that are making money off of it. And so I would hope that there be other people interviewed or
For instance, there's a subcommittee of the APC, the chair of that subcommittee certainly should be talked to.
yes.
Yeah.
And so that it's that about, it's not a developer's idea, it's a community idea.
And it'll become a council policy,
Yeah,
so.
and so there's two private sector proponents that are very good at talking about it, but that's not, I'm just uncomfortable that it should be a broader.
Well, and again, too, because the municipal logo's on it, if it was to be done before the policy is written, it just is a bit out of order.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a, it's also too, there was, in the proposal for the conservation development, one of the questions, one of the proposed actions in the proposal was that there'd be a walkabout and John Reed would show, his good work at Grafton Lake, the conservation there, but also it said other areas that may,
Sorry, just a second.
just down a bit,
Oh, and this?
yeah, other areas,
Walk around a couple of Bowen sites that have applied or will apply CP
Yeah.
principles.
yeah, so just again, with us sponsoring municipalities, logo being one, we can't be perceived to endorse any developments prior to.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
so again, it's just a little bit of a touchy
Yeah.
situation, you just have to be careful about that, so.
Did you want me to put the policy out?
Is it coming up in Maury only when it's not here, so maybe it comes up later.
Did we want to do any feedback on the heat pump one, so that when you guys meet with them, that we have a little bit more to give them?
That's good.
Yeah, and so I think this gets to what Will was saying a little earlier about, like, what are you looking for in the end? So a heat pump, that's for people like me, men, who kind of more interested, generally, I mean, this is generalizing, obviously, but men are more interested in that kind of stuff. So it's someone who owns a home. So this isn't children or anything like that. And what I would want to know is, how can I do this? Who are the experts? What are the hitches? I already know it's good. People know it's kind of good. It's going to be good. But how can it work for me? How do I do it? How much money is it going to cost me? How hard will it be? All those kinds of really practical things, because that's the barrier. So a story about what happened in partner in wherever it is, okay, that's kind of interesting, but that's a story in the undercurrent. That's not part of the video that will help me know how I can put a heat pump in my house. Because I want to put a heat pump in my house. I tried it, I went onto the provincial website, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
I was annoyed.
Yeah, and so, you know, the other thing about this is, you know, I'm doing work with Bob Turner and Lynn Gilday, and we're always talking about a story.
Yes.
And David is an optional story for this, is having Jake go to David's house and then have
A
David
discussion,
ask
yeah,
those
yeah,
questions.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
I tried,
And-
I'm frustrated.
Yeah, and you know, that's first of all, very engaging, you know, it's something that's actually happening, and that, you know, we're animals that live off of story.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing I would suggest is, talk to them about making it more of a story about David's discovery of
Jay teaches me how to do it.
Which would be great.
Yeah.
How to do it.
and so,
There was this old house, I don't know if anybody knows this series from the States,
Yeah.
which was basically that, this old house. How do I refurbish this? How do I put
yeah,
the basics back into?
yeah.
Yeah.
And each episode was somebody else's house with a different problem.
That's right.
And,
Trying to figure it out.
yeah, so that would be my suggestion is see if they can add a story to it. And we've got an example. More discussion? All right. So any motions needed? No?
I have for actions,
Yep.
I just have, just about Bonnie and David meeting with
Yep.
them. I've got kind of 2 bullets
Yep.
for the heat pump. Can you guys write those as well?
I think the storyboard will take care of all, like, I think that's
Yeah.
such a great thing.
I can give you a different idea. Like, if your idea, maybe the idea of the heat pump is to get a bunch of people together to do a buying group. That's a different goal. So if the goal is to get people like me to figure out how to do it, that's one thing. I mean, you can storyboard a way to make that. If the goal is to get a bunch of people who already know quite a bit about this to do a buying group, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But it's also an entirely legitimate story, but it's a different story. Okay, what story do you want to do, folks?
Yeah. Yeah.
In 5 minutes. or-
In 5
In
minutes.
5
Yeah.
Well, the beauty of this for me is instead of a 10-minute show,
Yeah.
there's you could do it in 3 4-minute segments.
Yeah.
That I would look at and say, oh, I want to see what David did with his house, and because that's you know, that's a problem I'm facing too. You know, I want to get a heat pump too, and then there's the other things about the co-op that you can buy heat pumps from. Is maybe that's what I'd go to after I understood
Exactly,
it.
after you, yeah. Yeah.
So
It's a
anyway,
different story, yeah.
yeah. So
I don't think we need a resolution.
I don't think so. Everybody okay with this? More discussion? Okay.
Work plan.
Hi, Janet.
minute. So, work plan.
Yay.
The work plan.
The idea tonight, I thought with the work plan, is we can just look and we can go check, check, check. Or we can, as a group, decide that we want to do, that we haven't quite finished that item. And then at the end, we can make a list of maybe just some brainstorm, some ideas for work plan 220.
Yep.
So what I'm gonna do is go back after the meeting and before next meeting, which is brand new, January, our next meeting. It's
That's right.
brand new. So I will come back with a cleaned up, nice, sort of cleaned up 220 potential plan for us. And I think, I just want to just reiterate sort of, we've got some great guiding documents. So we've got the parks plan. The parks plan has a lot of environmental recommendations in it. We have council's strategic priorities, and we have this work plan that was devised this year. So I always try to, I think ideas are great, and we want to keep ideas flowing, but we also want to see how those ideas that come forward tie in to other plans. I think it's important to sort of keep on track. I mean, a lot of great ideas are coming up, and I think we're doing a good job that way. But just a good reminder, like there are some great recommendations in the parks plan. There strategic planning for council's 220 is coming up in January, so we'll have some better ideas on where we're going with that. But we know that composting and water, pretty good bet that water sustainability type issues will be at the forefront. Yeah, so just a little reminder there. But so tonight, just looking tick, 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 and then just tossing out some potential ideas, and I'll come back in January with a cleaned up plan that we can make final.
Yep.
Looking through it, I think we've done a lot of this stuff. Carla, do you, just because you know it better, given that I was the lead, do you mind going through the items and then just seeing, say yay or nay?
No.
That'd be really helpful, thanks.
So increase the use of non-portable water cisterns for fire protection and outdoor water use. I guess we're still working on this, so I wouldn't check it off,
But in progress, that's,
but yeah.
I could just add on that this, it's in the climate change plan, as you all know. And when that went before council was certainly supportive of that idea.
Sorry, I'm sorry. What went before council?
Well, in the climate change strategy, the draft climate change strategy, there was like, this is the idea that seems kind of like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And that's another document that we
Yeah.
can keep referring to
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, that's great.
Collect rainfall and aquifer data for the purpose of sustainable water resource management. So, I don't know, I don't think we've necessarily done this.
no, I think the link that we've gone to that is Ellen has had identified that there was 1 or 2 test wells that are available for this. Having attended a workshop on groundwater from the Islands Trust that was one of the, I think it occurred last year, this shattered hard bedrock that we have makes it hellishly difficult to identify and quantify groundwater conditions on an island like Bowen Island. If it was sandstone like in the other Gulf Islands, it would be easy and it's done, but it's almost black magic in some cases where you look at groundwater in one area and people are spending thousands of dollars digging deeper and deeper wells where 2 lots over someone's got almost a surface well. So this is a monster challenge. So it won't be easy, but I think it's something that has to be addressed over the many years.
Well, we do have the one test well in Channelview, and that's with the provincial and with the telemetry equipment. And then our goal, and I know Carla's been working on it too, is to work with the province. They seem to be pretty eager, and we have a good relationship with the water technician there, Brian. And what we would like to do is have a test well for what it's worth in each of our aquifers, our known aquifers. There's seven. There's the one that's a bit unique, and that's the one around Rock Point. That area is kind of a neat one, I think, unique. Not so much of a rock fishery type. But anyway, that's our goal for what it's worth, is to get that some data. So we'll work on that. We'll keep working with the province. It's just tricky when there isn't a well available. They are quite specific on the type of wells that they what they will put their equipment into. It's probably my daughter, I'm sorry. They're really particular. They don't like the well to be in use. They like to be able to drive to the well or get access to the well. What else? They've got a bunch of criteria. There's a bunch of different criteria that they like to. So, but they also are into cost sharing to drill, but that's an expensive venture, perhaps, because we don't know how deep down we have to go. So, but anyway, our goal is, and we keep working towards, at least having a test well.
Is that project anything that could be funded by that water?
I doubt it.
Okay.
Just because this is a provincial network already
Yeah.
that they've been working on, I think, for a long time. And so we've got 2 wells in the network already. And also the funding is for water conservation, not for monitoring per se.
Yeah.
I did have a small update on this. I went out today and looked at a well because I talked to John Reed. Alan had talked to John Reed and pinpointed a bunch on the map. Most of them we weren't going to be able to use because they weren't in use, and the province won't use a well that's in use. But this one isn't in use. It's on private property, which they don't like, but they're at least
But they were okay. They kind of come around.
they
on
come
that,
around a
don't
little
they?
bit on that.
On
So
that second one, sorry, because that was done when I was gone, that is on private property, and they do an
it is on
agreement.
private property, and they have an
Yeah,
agreement.
that was really good.
So,
That was good.
so it's not in the network yet, but it's up and coming. So we have potential 3, and that's pretty good for not having drilled any wells.
Yeah.
And if you ever hear of wells that aren't in use that just happen to be around.
David?
Just listening to the 3 of you, I don't think, this is complicated, it's technical. I don't think this is volunteer work, it's staff work. It's work that's important, and it's going to take a while to do, but it's staff
I
work.
agree
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Like Alan had some specific expertise and memory and so on, but Alan's not even here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also another person who has a lot of knowledge is Angela.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's really good too.
Yeah.
She's provided us some information.
The other source that is somewhat available, at least to talk to, is Rosemary Knight, who her expertise is remote sensing of groundwater.
Okay.
And so she would at least be someone to talk to and just see what newfangled options are out there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. The third one, are we?
This is not for everyone. It's for us. So we can check this one off. Increase irrigation efficiency and decrease water use amongst gardeners.
Yeah, I was supposed to do this. I think this is volunteer work, this is important, it should be done. This is our, engaging the public, helping, so on. But,
So keep it,
So
keep
ongoing.
it for
I would say
Tuesday.
keep it, and
Yeah.
it has to be done. One of my problems is, I get all the garden, I'm a member of the garden club, and I get all the notices about the meetings. I've been to about one. So, it's sort of not the thing to do, say, hey, everybody, ever seen me before? Here's what I want you to do. It's not the way to get things done.
Yep. And,
So we'll keep it on there.
yeah,
It needs to be on there. I think,
Yeah.
David and others, we've got to figure out a strategy, and I don't have a strategy. I haven't done it.
and I think
Who else is on the garden club that might be interested in, climate
I
action?
know some people on it. I need to go talk to some people, I guess. But it would be good if I went to a couple of meetings and started,
Be kind.
and then get to know a few people. You're on the garden club.
yeah, I think the other partner in this would be the Agricultural Alliance.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's good.
I see that there's would be ideal to have an educational element here available on the BIM website, where just data about, or links to information about drip irrigation
Yeah.
and all these other options that, because it's already out there. I think having it being a clearinghouse for information is.
Well, that's actually what staff could do. We could compile some good resources and ensure that they're on our climate action web, our water sustainability section of our website. That's something that we could do as a staff.
But for the garden club, I went to the garden, maybe the only one I've been to. It's when you gave a presentation on insects. It was really interesting. So brought in an expert, you were the expert, talk about insects. So you could do the same.
Yeah.
Here's, bring someone from Lee Valley or whatever.
Yeah,
And,
That's a great idea.
they've got all their products and,
Yeah.
this one works really well, this one, and so on.
and, and other options would be someone like Brian Minter. who's
Sure.
On CBC
Yeah,
radio all the time.
yeah,
That would get a lot of
That
people
would
coming.
yeah. I mean, those are two quite separate topics. One is the kind of plants that don't need too
Yeah.
much water. The other is the kind of irrigation
Yeah,
systems
well,
that don't use too
but I
much.
think
Two different things.
I think he'd be
Yeah.
pretty knowledgeable on different irrigation systems
Yeah.
too.
Probably,
Because,
yeah.
but anyway,
But that's something that, we could organize, we could do. It should be on the list. It's next year.
I think we had that on a list somewhere that we wanted to do a climate conversation on xeriscaping. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
This is in the back of my mind somewhere that
Why not?
we thought we would bring in
Yeah.
an expert. And anyways, maybe it's later on the list.
Yeah.
Sorry, just down to number 4, the box. Provide education on the public, to the public on water consciousness. So I do believe, especially this summer, I wasn't here, but I did sort of tap into the website or the goings on here from Southeast Asia, and I saw lots of educational pieces. How to conserve water. So I don't know. It says Laura to speak to the school coordinator. So, is it just about education? And I think that the municipality is starting to compile some good educational pieces on water.
This was a particular project that we were
Okay.
talking about at the beginning of the whole, maybe 2 years ago almost, where I had watched a link and a video. It's about an hour long, and it's an international assembly that creates water consciousness, and it's called Water School. And it works throughout the world, and it brings water consciousness to different communities in order to help conserve, obviously, but promote education in a way that actually it acts as a global web. So the idea that I had at the time watching the video is that we have, this was where I brought it, was that having the support that I have at the Graftons, because I'm involved with the gardens and I help direct the gardens. We have an area there that's right across from the lake, and there's an outdoor area that I thought we could transform into this lovely little area for kids, which we're already working on. And the idea would be to bring the concept of water school, because it's already a managed program, and some other, I have talked about this to a few other people. Nothing's, just discussions, nothing more than that. But the thought of implementing a summer program where kids and kids from other communities can come for an afternoon and get a little education and see and feel and touch pristine water, extremely, beautiful landscape, and have an experience. So it's not only just education for our kids, but education on a broader scale. So,
Is that something that Bowen would do, or that the Grafton Commons group
Yeah,
would do? Then,
well-
so it wouldn't really be, I'm just trying to see how our committee
okay,
could
so what happened
fit
was,
into that.
what we had talked about was that Laura had started, I don't know what she did with it, that's the only sad part. I don't think she did anything with it. She was to take it, she'd already told me she'd done something, but then we never had the discussion and she kind of left it. So the project would need to be reviewed again to see if, but the idea would be to have the support of this committee, because there's some links that need to be made that would bring the right people in to help us hold the program, because it's I think it's through UNESCO or some other bigger body. It's not, it's actually, it's an international.
Yeah,
I've done a little bit of looking on the internet on this, and I think we're mixing things up a bit. The UNESCO Water School is international development aimed at adults.
Oh, this was for kids. This is
Okay,
for kids.
and so there's a lot of different things calling themselves water school.
Okay.
And, but some of the big ones are international development for developing countries where people don't know some of the basics of where the water comes from. And I think probably applicable to many Bowen Islanders too. But so I think we've got two options or two prongs of this, and one is aimed at children and one is aimed at adult citizens. And the U.S. Geological Survey has a great set of resources for kids, for schools and teachers. It's water science school. And so I think both are needed. I still bump into people adults that are sure that there's an sea channel of water from the mainland that goes to Bowen and supplies their well. And, this is poppycock. And so there's that end of things that we need to address is the basic understanding of groundwater and its connection
And many uses.
with rain and geology. And then there's the option of something for kids that's immersive. That's what I was looking
Thank you. Thank you. So maybe my question is that, having watched the video, it was geared towards kids, and it was actually done in very, very wealthy countries also,
Yeah.
not just countries that didn't have education about water or use of water properly. What I would like to ask is whether or not this is something that we could work on, and whether there would be any support here to work on that. Because it's something that's dear to me as an idea, to bring something of that to us.
I mean, I guess I just don't know it sort of sounds like you need support from staff, maybe not the committee or, so much. That's sort of my idea, that you might need maybe us to help if you host a workshop of some sort, I don't know. I would have to have guidance from the CEO to do that. I just don't know what the ask is. So if you, because it said that you've explored the conservation school, but I guess if you could, because it sounds like sort of, it's just kind of like the garden club would organize a speaker would come into the garden club, so that's sort of a club. It sounds like the Bowen the Grafton Commons group could organize a water event. That's what it sounds, a
Well,
water school.
I'm using that as an example. I have not approached
Okay.
John at all about that. We have other projects that we're working on. This was something that I brought a few years ago because Laura was working on it. I think there was never really a synergy with putting that idea forward properly.
Yeah,
So-
I have to link it back, like, I don't know what the ask is, so I don't know if this is the committee, because I don't really know what we can do to make it happen. I don't really know what the water school is. I can talk a little bit about it, but I don't know the whole concept.
So I sent around a trailer video that
Okay.
was basically a little bit of an understanding where it was going. Would you like me to send that to you, or would you like me to just do a reframe and submit another, do a little bit more research, get a clearer ask?
Yeah, because I don't know what the ask is.
Okay, I can do that. I can do that, and if it works, then
Yeah, I just don't know what it looks like. Because again, we have to link back our work plan, we have to link it back to what council, we have to do terms of reference in council, we have to link it to all the plans that we have here. I love ideas, but it has to fit into something. So if we were working on a water sustainability plan, let's say, if that was council strategic plan objective for 220, then maybe like
it would.
educational event could fit into that. But I don't know unto itself how we are going to fit it in. As I say, I don't really know what the
No,
ask
that makes
is.
sense to me, what you're saying. Makes perfect sense to me, thank you.
We'll sit down. Next one?
So are we leaving education on there then?
We'll move on to waste management. Reduce off-island transportation of waste and use this waste as a renewable resource. That's it. Pretty.
Well, that's an ongoing project.
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Work that's underway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biochar, I know I didn't go to the webinar. Has the webinar been now?
I think that's
Next week, okay. I haven't signed up for it then. So, I mean, I don't know, Alan's no longer on our committee, so I don't know about the biochar project, unless somebody,
I do a little bit about that. I asked him about it, and I guess he was, he pulled out on it. He pulled out away from doing the biochar workshop with us. So what we did was, because we want to have a demonstration and we want to do different prototypes on it, so we postponed it till the spring. But we are focusing on the spring at bringing it in.
and who's leading this?
That's the Grafton Gardens.
The Grafton
Yeah.
Gardens. So it's not really our work, on our work plan then? It's graciously the Grafton Garden folks are taking that over?
We're gonna take it
Okay,
on, yeah.
perfect.
We're gonna take it on.
Okay, thank you.
So this is, reduce plastic and waste and increase recycling of alternative materials.
Yeah, that never came to pass either. It had to do with Ellen and I'm not too sure what happened. It had to do with recycling, it had to do with a number of different issues that came to, coincided together.
Should we carry it over?
I think so. Well, looking at what the Ready's doing, they've sort of making the transition.
They've done a really good job with the transition.
And
I mean, this could tie into, the one above it, like the work on composting. So it would mean that whatever if we move forward with the composting, we need to make sure that if people are using compostable cutlery and so on that it actually will work
Yeah,
in the machine.
Well,
Because
yeah.
some will and some won't, depending on the temperatures and all that sort of stuff. And, okay, so Vancouver, like Victoria has banned plastic bags. Vancouver's about to. You know, single-use plastic is something that is a real concern globally.
So we can keep it on.
We can keep it on. It would involve some work with others and communications. It could be part of a little film series.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities, yeah. I think it does tie in nicely with just reducing,
Yeah.
reusing, reducing, yes.
Yeah.
And
Maybe this is,
that's carbon use too. You know, it's using it,
Mhm.
petroleum. So-
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, the reduce off-island transportation of waste. This is maybe something we would wanna work on is, promoting, creating less waste, right? So maybe something like an educational.
Well, because the most astounding thing from the preliminary report we received from the consultant for the composting, we got the draft report, which I just want to say that the committee will be privy to at some point after council has seen it. So council's going to be the first to see the report. But
But waste trash.
yeah,
It's
so,
just
just that the amount of waste that we generate, that was the most astounding, alarming, depressing part of the report was just the waste, the food waste that we found. That's a hard one to tackle, but anyway, it goes along. Trying to be more mindful of what we throw out, it's just astounding and just, yeah. If we could at least decrease that a bit, like that would be a feat into itself.
Building efficiency, find implementation pathway for BC Energy Step Code for rezoning applications. This is all done, isn't it?
I would say that it's really the planning department's sort of operational. That would be I think that we've done, council has done, has guidance of, figured out what's going to happen.
I think it might be just because Sarah was the representative on here before, so I'm not sure quite what that means for rezoning applications, like why that's different, because I know we've adopted step code, maybe that's just for building. So I wonder if there's a different part of it, but it does seem a little bit out of our.
Yeah, I think what that was that when we're doing a rezoning, we have a lever that we can, the
Oh, right.
municipality can say, okay,
Yeah.
everyone else is on step code 1 right now, but if you're going to do a rezoning,
Right.
you need to be on step code 2, or whatever. In other words, maybe that's what that was aiming at, pushing it a little further for when there's an opportunity to do so. But I mean, council has been quite aggressive on the step code, so we're going to be this time next year step code 3. Is that correct? I forget. It was quite aggressive. Whatever we did was.
I think it's.
We're at 1 now, but
This
we
year.
would be.
I thought it was by the end of this year.
I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
You either.
Be useful.
Soon.
Oh, no, maybe,
Soon.
yeah, soon.
I want to say 2020, but it seems
Yeah.
too soon, but it was, they were aggressive,
Yeah, it
the
was like
council's already
6
moved on this, and
Yeah.
you know.
The one thing I'd love to see is our building inspector is great,
Yeah.
Greg, and I would love him to do a climate, maybe he did he do a talk on
He
your
came
way?
and did a talk here
Oh, he did?
on the step code.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was,
I'd love him to do a climate conversation, because he's a very engaged, I think he's a good speaker. And,
good.
yeah, he's very personable,
So
very knowledgeable.
I kind of want to say that all of this is done.
I think the education program for local builders, I mean,
Yeah.
he's been working on that, I believe, right?
The
Yeah.
builders,
Yeah.
markets,
Yeah.
and workshop, so.
So what would we, as a committee, do on
There might be something when we do
to go to that step 3. I think at that point we may be tasked with something, but I think it's sort of working operationally
Yeah,
from kind of council guidance.
yeah. So that gets an X through it?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, I think
Maybe
the thing we have here on Bowen in transition, on heat pumps. So the step code is all about new buildings, but we need to help people do what's needed to re-insulate or put heat pumps or whatever in old buildings, existing buildings. If we can, you know, the little video, it could be aimed right at that. It's just helping people understand what can be done to get a heat pump, I mean, or buy a buying group.
Should we put that as a,
I think
on our
tie it
plan
right
video?
into, the work that we're doing ties into the video, so it's
Heat
not
pumps
just
are alternate
Yeah.
energy sources
Yeah,
for the home, kind of for.
retrofitting homes,
Retrofitting.
retrofitting homes, helping people retrofit homes to make them more energy efficient and cost less to heat.
Um, Okay, so
And
the
we've got one
the
example
action
happening right here,
is,
so we're already on it.
the action is, educate.
It's education stuff,
Educate,
yeah, education and engagement.
Yeah.
Maybe when we've got the video, other people will say, hey, this is interesting, let's form a buying group so we can do more, or they might say something else, who knows?
Do you know that, what is it, Denman or one of the other Gulf Islands has a co-op buying group,
Yeah,
and I actually bought membership because, you know, they came and gave a talk. Were you at that? At Collins
I've heard
Hall?
about it, yeah.
But they were very helpful. They said they would come and facilitate the development of a Bowen buying group, or that people
Yeah.
like me could just join.
Yeah.
And so,
So it's worth keeping it on there, because we could think of ideas and so on,
Yeah.
bring people over, give talks, whatever.
okay,
Very good, good.
are we on the bottom?
Transportation, or do we get to transportation?
What we did with that was just say, you know, BIMTAC has got a plan and support BIMTAC's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we just skip a couple though?
I think
So,
there are.
Oh, yeah,
Thanks.
we did.
okay, I just did only, crossed out the above. Ladies first.
So,
I think in 220 or 221, we're going to be doing our community energy and emissions plan update. So instead of maybe reviewing OCP and land use bylaw to make suggestions and recommendations on sections that may limit energy performance potential, that's a big feat. That takes a lot of woman power
Yeah.
hours. So I think that maybe it is like assist as a committee. It would help Carla and I, the committee, possibly assist in preparing for the seat update. That would be a good initiative.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think it's such a great idea to go through OCP and land use plan, but it's such a lot. It's such a lot. Yeah. It's just because I know that planning staff are meticulous in for years. They've been going through and trying to come up with some suggested edits to land use plan. The OCP, we are probably due pretty soon for an update.
Drop your seatbelts on, please. Okay, so are we moving to transportation?
This is probably just an ongoing
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've got that great transportation master plan.
Okay.
Environmental.
Environmental protection, so support conservation and development. we're gonna be doing a review of that.
Yeah, you'll be doing
next
a review of it.
meeting, So,
Yeah.
should we just leave that as ongoing
Yeah.
for now? Assess options for shoreline protection, feasibility and mechanisms, review existing
We
research.
have in the work plan, Carl and I have been discussing this, and in the work plan, what we are going to do is, this year, we're gonna develop some guidelines. Like, I'm on the working group, the intergovernment Green Shores working group, and Carla translated to the phone calls, and Green Shores is great, but I kind of want to make it just a really simple checklist to have disseminated through our website and other communication means for guidelines for shoreline development. Green Shores is fantastic. It's a bit complex, and I haven't had great success, unfortunately, thus far on Bowen, encouraging people to utilize the Green Shores method. But I think we can simplify it and make it very Bowen specific, at least have some guidelines. I think the strategic planning session I probably will be recommending, and I think some councillors probably would be, thinking the same way as shoreline protection mechanisms. We don't have any right now. And at staff level, it can be quite frustrating seeing armoring after armoring, hardening after hardening, and there's nothing. We have no tools in our toolbox. So, that's another mechanism we could look at is developing some shoreline development permit areas or regulations around that. But I think the guidelines is a good first start. That's something that we can do, Carla and I, and at least it's something.
Yeah, are you in contact with Islands Trust about this too?
I have.
Yeah, because they're
very active.
they're doing some really good stuff right now. Yeah.
So, if staff is going to do all this work, what's this committee going to do?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely could ask for assistance. We could bring the guidelines to the committee for feedback and input.
Assist in the establishment of a site alteration bylaw. So Daniel's working on this, isn't he?
Yeah, it was going to
Just
come,
about done.
it was gonna come the 9th of December, but it was just a really packed agenda, so it will be in the new year, it will come towards to council, and council will be deciding at that point on the scope of the potential bylaw.
So it might come to us for review anyways,
Okay.
but I think we probably take up the list, yeah. Review the hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment, 2018. That's all finalized, isn't it? Yeah.
So nothing to do there?
Is there a reason that we were going to review it this year when it was already done? Or?
When was it done?
It was done in 2018, it says.
Oh.
Wasn't that done through the NBC? Or through Jen?
Yeah, Jen.
Yeah, Jen did it. I think I was part of that.
It might be kind of a working document, like I'm not sure if it's.
There's actually a method of assessment that's pretty practical. It's interesting to look at, but it's more of a workshop that I've run. I mean, you get the documents and all that, but there's actually a process that they teach you on how to, and it's for everybody. It's not just for, but it's a practical way of approaching a situation.
Assess opportunity
So we're taking that off.
I think so. Sorry.
Yeah.
Assess opportunity for Bowen to participate in the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative. I want to see that's done. Support implementation of the Parks Plan. If that could be the whole. Report out to the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. So this happens every year, so we can keep that on there, I think. And to ensure community energy and emissions plan implementation. I think this is can still be on there because completing it, a new one, is
Yes. I think it's good that we fulfill all the obligations in there.
continue climate conversations, organize events, and
Yep.
consider consider possible topics, so.
I was thinking, so a few topics came up in our discussion today. There was our building inspector potentially, but there's another couple that was brought up earlier in the meeting that might be potential climate conversations.
I said xeriscaping
Xeriscaping
and
and
irrigation
grout.
techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering if Alan would do a biochar. That's good.
yeah.
That'd be good.
And the building inspector would be
How about a private conversation on the climate strategy?
It's a good idea. But we need to get it, I mean, so it's, you know, done the rounds of of array, almost done, a rounds of an array of committees, a couple of workshops. But then it's more, other folks would be interested in, I mean, climate conversations have been pretty small, you know, kind of 20 people around this table. So, but I think we need to get it, we need to come up with a way of getting it out to the public more. I don't know what that is, but, you know, we could think of what we could do.
bring it to life.
Yeah.
I think, again, probably not something that Bowen in transition could do, but I think doing even an animated video about what it is and first of all, I'm thinking of the PowerPoint that you did for, and just turn that into a video, you know, just, you know, it would have voiceover and it'd be advancing the slides.
I mean, there's a bunch of filmmakers, little men or Judy or
Yeah.
Jack.
Yeah.
I would all be interested in something like this probably.
Yeah.
Try to do something. Yeah, so I think communications around the climate strategy, once we've got, it's gone through the committees and council approved it, we need to sell it.
Yeah.
So I've got one more climate idea that I just want to run by, especially the three staff people here. So one of the things around, and this is to be part of the climate change strategy, how it fit, it's a high level thing. So one of the things about that is that we all know there's no silver bullet, there's no one thing that you can do, it's a whole array of things, and it has to be thought of in almost everything you do. You've got to think of what's the climate implications of this. So whenever we have a staff report that goes to council, we've got, you know, the problem and then what's being done about it and stuff like that. And then there is kind of a piece on communication implications, and there's a piece on financial implications. There could be a piece on climate or CO2
I just brought
implications.
this up last meeting.
Oh, did you?
We were thinking the
Yeah.
same way.
All right.
And
It's in your consent agenda for Monday night.
For Monday night.
No kidding.
Your magic.
Okay.
You're magic.
All right. And I hadn't read it, I didn't know that. I just,
No, it was just, because we talked about it, sort of, I've heard it over the years and it just never.
it actually came from you, because you said for that report that we just had done, we needed a GHG analysis. And I realized, well, of course we do. We need a GHG analysis and everything we do. And so that's where it came from.
Okay.
Nice.
And I was saying in our discussion of that, I don't know if it was meeting we were before, but that sometimes we won't really know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, but we'll more from time, we'll learn.
Yes,
We'll
exactly.
learn it collectively.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool.
yeah.
So I just want to make sure that there were three topics that were to be discussed tonight, and we decided to fold it into
Yep.
the work plan, and that was the forest canopies, plastic bags, and,
There we go, plastic bag.
yeah. So did we want to fold that into the work plan conversation?
Sure.
So the first one was the rainfall article.
So basically, this is talking about how urban areas need to look after the trees better and have systems natural systems that allow infiltration into of precipitation into groundwater system. And my thought was, after reading this, is we're not an urban community, but we're doing urban things now with cluster development and John Reed's project. So the idea of making sure that, and I just have to look at the development that's going on by the seniors co-op and looking at that's pretty high density development, and I'm seeing, and first thing they did was take all the trees out. And I don't know if there's even space for much vegetation there. But the idea of the more we're doing this, the more we're going to have to incorporate some of this kind of thinking into those type developments. So, and frankly, it will make it a more livable place too, to have natural vegetation incorporated in those tighter developments. So that's my thought is maybe we should be working on this as a recommendation to council for any time we're looking at cluster development. Carmen?
I think that the site alteration bylaw definitely addresses this.
I think there's a lot of
Starts
talk
to.
about trees, but again, we don't know the scope of it yet. So council's going to decide on the scope of the site alteration bylaw. But there are some aspects potentially council will go that way. But also the conservation development policy sort of addresses this as well.
And as long as, my big picture of conservation development is that you leave a big chunk of land and then you high density develop over here, and I'm not sure that anybody's talking about what to do in that high density development. So that's.
And maybe that's the area where we can have input on the conservation development strategy.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Like
Yeah.
this could be comments.
David?
So there was a really good report that was presented to the Metro Vancouver Climate Action Committee a little while ago, a few months ago. And it was on two things, on tree cover and permeable surfaces.
Yep.
And it's looking at the change over time, and they did it by doing aerial photographs or all those complicated things that they know how to do that I don't know how. And it was really interesting. What's happened over time is that it used to be that single-family home areas had more tree canopy and more permeable surfaces.
Yep.
It's now switched so that multifamily developments and apartment buildings have more tree canopy and more permeable surfaces. Because what they're doing, instead of old apartments, they would fill the whole block and there'd be 4-story walk-ups. And they're for people who couldn't afford to live in a home, in a single family home. Apartments have changed. Apartments now are trying to create a whole bunch of green space around it and densify the development going up here, so they got room for all kinds of trees and permeable surfaces. And so the two of these switched places, which is really, because what's happening in single family homes is giant homes are taking up the whole lot and then a big pile of driveways for all the Ferraris.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, but the interesting thing though, of course, is the importance of tree cover for all kinds of things.
Yeah.
To slow the water moving, for our rocks,
Yeah.
slow it down, but also for cooling and all the things that trees do as well, providing life for all kinds of creatures. So for us to make sure that when, conservation development comes through, or maybe the site alteration or something like that, we want to make sure the tree canopy is maximized.
Yeah. Yeah.
In line with fire smart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
know,
right.
that's
Yeah, figure it out, yeah.
Well, actually, you know, having been to a Fire Smart workshop, I asked one of the experts there, I said, you know, my house is surrounded by big leaf maples. And he said, good, you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
And he said, it's the conifers that will kill you. And so, you know, that's another part
Yeah,
of it,
exactly.
you know, getting that expertise to advise about those, for those denser developments. People
Yeah, trying-
still have to rake leaves, but it's good for
Yeah.
them.
So tying the tree canopy
Good
stuff
on you.
into fire smart is important, because that's, it-
Definitely.
good.
So that's kind of not gonna, that's just gonna be on the work plan through the conservation development process, I just made a note. Thank
Sure.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. And then the next, was,
Plastic bag banning, I think.
right, plastic bag.
So I think that was in the work plan already, kind of. But it could, but a note could be.
Yeah, I think it's
Waste
more,
management?
it's being reinforced by what the big cities around us are doing, so. And I think at one time, wasn't Victoria getting some kind of legal hassle from the paper, the plastic bag industry about,
Yeah, probably.
but they're going
But
through
it's
it
happening,
anyway.
it's through now.
Yeah.
It's done.
And what's the last one?
The Citizens Fight Climate Change on Bowen Island, having a municipal website, I think that's yours, Will.
Yeah.
From the article.
Oh, the link is to the Christian article, great article, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, a list of a bunch of case studies of Bowen Islanders that are doing something about climate change in, you know, on their property or in their lifestyle or that kind of thing, so that there's this bank of ideas and reinforcement that making those little changes or in some cases big steps that you as an islander can do.
You know, we have the carrot report, which is kind of exactly that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
I
okay,
mean, that could be just a starting point,
yeah,
but if you're picturing something, there's a list already, is all
Yeah.
I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you, and nobody is going in and reading the carrot
Yeah.
reports, that's not what I'm saying.
yeah.
I'm just saying,
There's a
good
starting point, yeah, because again, you know, with David's point about people only spending 5 minutes on something, and Jeff pointing out that, yeah, sometimes it's 17 seconds. You know, the idea of, instead of a big report, there's all these little bite-sized chunks on the website that you can find what you're looking for easily and digest it quickly.
That's all for this section, then.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you think of any ideas for the 220 work plan, please email me or Steph.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll bring the cleaned up, I'll bring the new version, the new plan, the draft 220 to the next meeting.
Is there anything around adaptation down there?
That's a good one.
That's an excellent point.
We go at trying to get that workshop going here, and that didn't go forward, but there's another opportunity.
Which was that?
We did that application to the
oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Preservation Council.
Yeah.
Nice to find another way to go forward with.
Such a big deal, adaptation.
Yeah.
And, you know, a kind of a corollary of adaptation is some of the predictions of what the future is likely to hold too, so.
I mean, I don't know if it gets into adaptation better or mitigation, but the green shores, shoreline protection, naturalizing shorelines, that's something that we will be working on. I mean, I could sort of around that topic, I could put a little bit more language about adaptation.
That was my first thought too. I think that is an adaptation technique, is, preparing your shoreline for storm surges and that
And
kind of thing.
sometimes it's mitigating
Doing
what
it.
damage has already been done, but but I think it's a good adaptive measure,
And that's kind of what I see the most, that's like our biggest risk is our shorelines.
And so is it maintaining our tree canopy. However, there is that double-edged sword, because there is the fire smart, but yet the tree canopy is so important to keep the moisture and everything, so keep the ecology going and functioning and supplying that groundwater. It's just all so complex, everything is connected, so, but again, that talking about adaptation, I think a bit more, using that language is important.
Maybe that could be on the work plan, exploring adaptation techniques.
Right?
Yeah,
Like just looking at.
yeah, I think that's great.
To go on.
We need the updates.
So, yeah, staff. And Carla?
Staff update.
I only had a couple of things I was gonna talk about. The cisterns, but I think we kind of covered all that already. And then the composting study, which we kind of covered, but I'll just let you know that we've gotten the first draft. It's still pretty rough, and I think there's a fair amount of work to be done. Like Bonnie had said, she was really interested in seeing the GHG emissions, the comparison, and analysis for that. So that's gonna be put into there. But we have met with the CFO and the CAO, and they were really interested in hearing the business case.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
they don't, and I think that our consultant really made the business
so
case
good.
for them.
Yeah.
So,
That's so great.
Yeah.
and I mean, this is all kind of preliminary right now. I think there's still work to be done, but so far we're looking really good. And I think we're gonna bring it back. He's gonna do a bit more work, and then we're gonna bring it back to council and do a committee of the whole probably in late January.
Fantastic.
And then,
This is
and
so
then,
exciting.
yeah, so once that's done,
Yeah.
and we might actually have it where we invite everyone to come to that so they can get, because I think the consultant will present. And then, so everyone can get a good overview of it, and then we would welcome comments, or maybe we would do a separate workshop. We're not quite sure how that will look, but we do want to have, give everyone an opportunity to comment as well as the food sovereignty people
Yeah,
and,
Yeah.
those with expertise.
There's a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people
Yep.
waiting for so many years.
Yeah.
But it'd be really great to have ECAAC support at whatever, that's the plan right now, is late January. We'll see our CEO going back in January, so, but that's the plan right now, but it's subject to change.
But the CFO felt that the business case seemed okay, because that's my.
Very solid.
I looked at it, I thought this looks great, but I want someone with more expertise than me to say this looks great.
And he's actually amending it because the business case, given some new numbers from Raj, it
Okay.
actually turns out even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was like kind of even.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, this seems okay. I think we can sell it.
Yeah.
And then when Raj gave us the other numbers, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
sold. So
Excellent.
I think that's
That's good.
where we're at. Hopefully everything is accurate.
Okay. So, David?
Yeah, VinTech, I just flipped through the agenda here. I think the most important one from a transportation perspective, and this is tricky, because what happened was, it was recommended from council that VinTech have a look at this. And that's that because we're looking at selling area 1 of lot 2, which is the triangle just right across from Village Square, which is was made into temporary parking, and it's highly used as temporary parking, and VinTech has actually been monitoring how much it's used. so at the council meeting, I wasn't there. Back when I was sick and I missed a council meeting, it got raised that one councillor raised that, well, we need to replace that parking with something. And so it passed, but 2 other councillors opposed it, saying we shouldn't be increasing parking when we're looking at reducing greenhouse gases and so on. So BIMTAC looked at it, and BIMTAC, the point that was discussed a whole lot there, or I guess a couple of them, is that people who are taking what we used to call Peter's bus, but the express bus in town, they need to get to the cove. Some of them can take the bus because there is a bus that goes near their house, but a whole lot of Bowen doesn't have a bus, and they have no other way. If they're going to be taking, if we want people to, number one, greenhouse gases is driving from Horseshoe Bay to wherever you're going. So for those people, they need to be able to park somewhere in the cove. And so, and another point that was raised was around, it was one member who has young children, who I know he and his wife were avid cyclers. And when I was cycling to work, she would pass me. She's a very good cyclist. Or I would pass her when I had my electric bike, but other than that, she would pass me. That, you know, when you've got 2 young kids, it's hard to be doing all your cycling to the cove because, you know, you've got to deal with your kids and all that. So different stages, you can do different things. So they recommended then that parking be, the council look at finding alternative parking on the main roads. So, and this is, I guess I can explain one of them to you because it's kind of cool. So this would be, you know, down here, along here. I know there's a path right along here, but okay, maybe the path could be moved over a bit and parking, I'm not sure. The other is right down here. So I'll explain this to you, and this is an idea that staff came up with about 3 years ago when I was not on council, I was on MIMTAC. And okay, you know how when you drive off the ferry, you have to move way to the right, and if you've never done it before, you think, oh my God, I'm going to get hit by people coming right at me. And that was deemed unsafe by a consultant who looked at this. So one of our staff recommendations was instead of having the parking on this side of the road, have the parking on the north side of the road, then you don't have to change lanes, you're right in line. You're no longer having to do this. The other great advantage of that is, you know, all those annoying crosshatched areas because of all the parking things you've got? That takes up about a dozen parking spaces. So you have about a dozen more parking spaces just by painting a couple of lines differently. So those were the ideas that BIMTAC came up with to provide more parking spaces. So I should say though that 2 councillors voted against that. So, you know, that will come back to council and there'll be a long discussion at council. But
They didn't vote against that north side solution.
No,
It
that was,
hasn't come
no,
to them
the
yet.
council, previous council, I know the mayor didn't like that idea. I'm not sure where the rest of council was. It was a staff idea and I don't think it was ever, BIMTAC thought it was great, but I don't think it ever saw the light of day in any other way, but I'm not sure. So that will, you know, come back to council and there'll be more discussion about that.
And I guess it would be much more cost effective to build some extra parking than to have another shuttle bus going to other parts of the community.
In the climate change plan, we've got to have, and I've talked to Gary about this a whole lot, we've got to have buses that cover the whole island. We have to have it. And, you know, if we want people to be able to get out of their cars, they have to have an alternative. Right now, for, I don't know, a big chunk of the population, there is no alternative.
Yeah.
So it has to happen. How it's going to happen, Gary and I talked to the head of TransLink about it when he was here doing that little press conference he did about the shuttle bus thing. And he understood our point. But, you know, it's very difficult for TransLink when they've got students lining up at, you know, because they can't get on the SkyTrain or they can't get on the express bus going to UBC, and we've got buses that are going around our island that are half empty. We're a low-density area. Low-density area is really hard to serve with transit. You know, the on-call one, maybe that helped a bit, maybe it didn't. It's hard to know because, okay, if somebody from Hood Point, you're coming off the ferry, someone at Hood Point wants the on-call and someone at the golf course wants the on-call, what is the driver supposed to do? Well, the driver will only be able to do one of them, not both. And so, you know, when you're, when you've got the pattern of development that we have, it's really hard to do. But that's something maybe with newer technologies, on-call type things, smaller vehicles, electric vehicles, maybe these can all,
Yeah.
self-driving vehicles, who knows? But who knows? But it's work that needs to be done, but it's hard for TransLink to do it because we're really expensive per person. We're really expensive. Well, I said that to the head of TransLink. He said, "Yeah, but you need the service." He was quite nice. I admitted we were expensive, and he didn't care.
Is there any formal report coming back on that trial service, whatever it was called again?
There will be. I don't know
Yeah,
yet.
okay, yeah.
There will be. I haven't seen anything. Emma would be the one who would have heard something about it. And we, at every BIMTech meeting, we ask Emma about it. Nothing so far. And yeah, so no point commenting. I have no idea when or what came out of it. I don't know.
There's this too, we're looking into getting that bars and handrails for
On
capacity.
BIMTech?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, here's another thing. Okay, so this was me. So our buses are sometimes half empty, but in the summer, when we've got a lot of tourists who want to go to Tunstall Bay or whatever, sometimes our kids can't get on because the buses are full and because they're not allowed to have standees. And so this irritates me completely because I ride the 257 where it's packed with people standing and you're going 100 kilometers an hour. And you know, you got vertical bars and think that you're supposed to, it's safe because you're holding on to things. But if you had an accident, like it'd be cut in two by these bars. Whereas we're not allowed to have standees on a bus that's wandering around on Bowen at 40 kilometers an hour. So I talked to Emma about it. She was going to check to see if there's any way that, you know, these will be rules. It's not something that we can change. But is there a way shuttles could have straps you could hang on to, or I mean, you can grab a seat just as easily. You can grab those bars. But anyway, is there any way around this? So Emma was going to look into that and see if there's anything that can be done. Because it just seems so sad that kids can't get across because the bus, you're not allowed to stand when we all know you can stand.
Any more, Dave?
No thanks. I mean, no.
Okay. So next one is council update. Shall we-
So I just gave those to Maureen, just
Yeah.
to highlight 3 things that have happened at council.
And I see the logging one. What else do we have?
So then this conservation development policy
yeah.
referral,
Yeah, so that's
That-
coming here. So we'll all
that'll
get to
come
see
in
it.
January. I just wanted to sneak you the information, it's ready, it's come from council, so you have the information. So if you want to read it on Christmas morning, New Year's morning,
Oh, right.
it's all in your package, ready to go. And the next one is the 1050 Miller Road rezoning as well.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk about that? Okay, I'll talk about it very briefly. So here's Miller Road. So in the OCP, this area, and this area are, and a couple of little tiny spots here, are seen as areas where we could have more density and allow some affordable housing. So there was a proposal right around here to take one of those lots and to actually put a fourplex, a duplex, and a sixplex or something like that on it, which changes the density considerably. And so what staff recommended is that they, rather than just deal with that one right now, look at the whole thing and see, okay, well, what kind of density should we be having? Is there any way of clustering, not clustering, that's not the right word, putting it all together in some way so that instead of having a whole bunch of driveways, you have fewer of them and you can turn them into a multifamily homes, cluster of multifamily homes, rather than what we have here where we got all those single family homes with, you know, this much space in between them. Put them all together and you've suddenly got more green space potentially, something like that. So anyway, Daniel and staff will be looking at that, and that's more to come. But it's the idea of, you know, to provide affordable housing. The proposal was for all rental, so you know, it's rental housing in the Cove. It's what we need, where you can walk to this and that, and so on, and to school, to the ferry, to the shops. So that was what that was.
Do we have a limit on how many stories they can be right now?
Oh, these are all tricky.
We do.
Yes, if you, so I could go on a bit about this, but, okay.
Sorry.
So it's sort of supposed to be kind of like 2.5 stories, maybe 3 or something like that, 2.5. But this is from planning that was done in 2005. And that, I think that plan was now put into the OCP. I think that's what Sue Ellen was saying. But you know, it's quite old, and the trouble with 2.5 stories is if you try to get an affordable apartment, you can't do it at 2.5 stories. It's too expensive. So we might like to keep things low, but it means you won't have the things that we want. So you have to have it taller than that, because that's what allows the person who's building the thing to be able to recover their costs and have some more affordable units. So that's another thing that will be looked at as well as the overall density.
I think the fire truck can only access four stories or something.
There was discussion around that, but there's been some, we're going to look into that a little bit more, that it seems that actually that was information that was perhaps not true. There are all kinds of issues around fires that you have to understand, whether there's sprinkling, whether there isn't, and all kinds of stuff like that. The fire-resistant materials, and so it's above my expertise, but
Did you have something to add, Bonnie, about? I think I can do it all next meeting. It was just some updates, but they're not tons and stuff. I can do it next meeting.
So, looks like we're done like dinner.
excellent.
So do we have those 2 items then to review for January,
Yeah. So,
January meeting then?
so this link, you'll be getting it in the package in January, but this links over to, if you go to the link that I sent you, this excerpt from the council meeting,
Yeah.
which will link you to, do lots of linking, oops, I
Yeah.
wanna save this. Ugh,
But I should just say, so what's happened is that council,
it'll link you to the policy.
they went back, the draft conservation development, it's a report explaining what this is all about, and then sort of a pretty simplified policy. It went back to the subcommittee of APC to add a few bits to it, to explain a little bit more about it. So the chair is doing some work on that right now, and I want to add a little bit more as well. So what will be brought around to the array of committees will be somewhat different from, you know, a little bit more explanation than what you'll see there. So it won't be quite the same.
Yeah, see, they're not ready yet,
Yeah.
but
not
there
quite
is
ready.
information there.
Yeah, it does give an explanation of where this came from and what it's about and so on, and why, and what the advantages are and something like that. So it's a pretty good report, I think, but it needs a bit of work still.
So if you have a problem accessing the links, just send me an email and I can.
So, we have to have a motion to adjourn?
Happy to do that.
There you go.
So, thanks anyway, but I hope it's not necessary. Well, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Will.
I got it, okay, steps.
Okay.
And I guess we need to get recruiting in.
Yeah.
Yes,
Networks.
the word. So nice when there's a full, we